The manipulation of resistance training variables is widely considered an essential strategy to maximise muscular adaptations. One resistance training variable that has received a lot of attention regarding enhancing muscle hypertrophy is training volume. This presentation, brought to you by Talking Sports Science, will be a summary of the article published in the Strength and Conditioning Journal titled Evidence-Based Guidelines for Resistance Training Volume to Maximise Muscle Hypertrophy by Brad Schoenfeld and Jozo Grgic. If we look at defining what volume is defined as the total amount of work performed and can be expressed in several ways. We will now look at the advantages and disadvantages of the different methods for quantifying volume. The first method is number of sets performed. This is the easiest way of tracking volume. However, only using the number of sets performed as a proxy for volume does not take into consideration the number of repetitions and external load. Therefore, it provides only limited insights into the total amount of work performed in a training session. The second method is sets times reps. In comparison with the number of sets, this method provides more insights into the total amount of work performed. However, this method does not take into account load, and therefore, even if the number of total repetitions is the same, the total volume load might differ based on the weight used. And then on to the third method, which is sets multiplied by repetitions multiplied by load, otherwise known as volume load. This method is likely the most appropriate because it considers all variables. However, it can provide conflicting findings based on external load, because with low load training, higher total volume load is needed for hypertrophy. Furthermore, displacement can also be considered in the volume load equation, because those with longer limbs ultimately perform more work than those with shorter limbs. All these measures can be considered viable ways to gauge resistance training volume, because no consensus currently exists in terms of quantifying volume. If we assume all other variables are kept constant, increasing the volume will increase time under tension, which has been proposed as an important driver of anabolism needed for muscle growth. We're going to now turn our attention to practical applications. There is compelling evidence that resistance training volume is a primary driver of hypertrophy, with higher volume showing greater increases in muscle growth. Therefore, those of you aiming to maximise hypertrophy should train with multiple set protocols. 10 plus sets per muscle per week is recommended as a good starting point. However, substantial gains can be achieved with volumes as low as 4 or fewer sets per muscle per week. So for those of you who are short on time, lower volume routines represent a viable option to balance efficiency with muscle growth gains. Training consistently with higher volumes has been claimed to accelerate the potential onset of overtraining. So it makes sense that periodizing your training volume may enhance hypertrophy. As a result, we will now look at an example number of sets per muscle group per week and how volume can be manipulated and progressed over the course of a training year. In weeks 1 to 12, you can start off by using between 7 and 10 sets, with the aim to stimulate hypertrophy and prepare the body for higher volumes. As you move into weeks 13 to 24, you can progressively increase the rate of hypertrophy with moderate training volumes, for example, between 10 and 15 sets. In weeks 25 to 36, we are progressively aiming to increase the rate of hypertrophy further by continuing to use higher training volumes, for example between 15 and 20 sets. Now in weeks 37 and 38, in order to allow the body to recover, a deload phase can be implemented, where volume is reduced to 2 to 3 sets. Following on from the reduction in training volume, in weeks 39 to 46, volume can be ramped up to very high levels using 20 to 25 sets. This level of volume aims to promote functional overreaching. In weeks 47 to 52, we see again a reduction in volume by using 5 to 7 sets. Training volume can be reduced as much as 65% in order to allow for supercompensation of muscle proteins and the maintenance of muscle mass. It should be noted that these are just suggested set ranges and volume levels should be tailored to your individual needs and abilities. Nevertheless, progressively increasing from lower to higher resistance training volumes over a period of several months may help to promote a state of functional overreaching, which would, in turn, result in a supercompensation of muscle proteins while reducing the potential for overtraining. Put simply, this will help to maximize muscle hypertrophy in the long term. Thanks for listening, folks. This presentation was brought to you by Talking Sports Science. See you next time.